For 7 years, the girl touched her ear. Every doctor said the same thing. Nothing we can do. Her father spent tens of millions, flew specialists in from Seoul, Tokyo, Zurich. They ran every test. Every scan. Every procedure money could buy. They all shrugged. Her father wasn't just rich. He was Park Jun-suk, the most feared Korean mafia boss on the West Coast. Men trembled at his name. Empires crumbled at his command. But he couldn't make his daughter hear. Then a maid noticed something no one else did, and what she pulled out of that child's ear will leave you absolutely speechless. Park Jun-suk was a king. Not the kind who wears crowns. The kind who wears tailored black suits and tattoos that crawl up his neck. The kind whose name makes powerful men go silent. His empire stretched from Los Angeles to Seoul. But his daughter COA was born deaf. 7 years old, never heard a single sound. Not her father's voice. Not music. Not even her own crying. Jun-suk tried everything. The best clinics in Korea. Switzerland. New York. Specialists who charged more per hour than most people earn in a month. They ran tests, scans, procedures. All of them said the same thing. Congenital. Irreversible. Accept it. But Jun-suk couldn't accept it because COA was all he had left. His wife died giving birth to that girl. Complications. Too much bleeding. Too little time. He held her hand while the light left her eyes. So he kept searching, kept spending, kept begging God for an answer he didn't believe would come. What he didn't know. The answer wasn't coming from a hospital. It was coming from the black woman he just hired to clean his floors. Serena Johnson was a maid. 29, no degree, no credentials, just a woman trying to pay for her brother's cancer treatments. But she noticed something about COA that every specialist had missed. Something in her ear. Something dark. And one evening while Jun-suk was away handling business, she made a decision that would either save that girl's life or end her own. What happened next? I need you to see it for yourself. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This story is going to shake you to your core. So, smash that subscribe button because you do not want to miss what happens next. Now let's begin. The Park Mansion sat high in the Los Angeles hills, hidden behind iron gates and walls that could stop bullets. From the outside, it looked like a fortress. White stone, black trim, windows that reflected the California sun like mirrors. Gardens manicured to perfection. Cars worth more than houses lined the driveway. But inside, silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that feels like rest. This silence was heavy. Thick. Like something had died and no one knew how to bury it. Servants moved through the hallways without speaking. Their footsteps were soft, careful. They'd learned quickly. Mr. Park liked things quiet. No television noise. No music echoing off the marble floors. No laughter bouncing through the rooms. Just silence. And somewhere in that silence, a king was breaking. Park Jun-suk sat in his study most evenings, staring at the portrait above the fireplace. There she was. Min-ji. His wife. Her smile frozen in oil paint, her eyes still bright, still alive. She wore the white dress from their wedding day. Next to her, a younger version of himself. Before the gray touched his temples. Before the weight settled into his shoulders. Before he learned what real loss felt like. They called him the most feared man on the West Coast. Korean Mafia. The words alone made powerful men nervous. His empire stretched from Los Angeles to Seoul. Casinos. Imports. Things people didn't ask questions about. Men twice his age bowed when he entered a room. His enemies disappeared without a trace. His word was law in streets that police feared to walk. But none of that mattered now. Minji died the day COA was born. Complications, the doctors called it. Too much bleeding. Too little time. Jun-suk held her hand while the light left her eyes. She'd been trying to say something. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Just like their daughter would be. Silent. Forever silent. He never forgave himself. If he'd chosen a different hospital. If he'd demanded better care. If he'd been paying closer attention. Maybe she'd still be here. Maybe COA would be different. The guilt sat on his chest like a stone he couldn't lift. So he did the only thing he knew. He spent money. Tens of millions. The best specialists on Earth. Seoul. Tokyo. Switzerland. New York. He flew them in on private jets, put them up in penthouse suites, paid whatever they asked. They ran tests. Scans. Procedures. All of them said the same thing. Congenital nerve damage. Irreversible. There's nothing we can do. You need to accept this. Accept it. How could he accept that his daughter would live in silence forever? How could he accept that COA would never hear her father say, "I'm sorry your mother isn't here"? Park Jun-suk had never accepted defeat. Not in the streets. Not in business. Not in war. He wasn't about to start now. Serena Johnson arrived on a Thursday morning in November. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that makes everything feel heavier than it should. She stood at the iron gates of the Park estate, clutching her bag with both hands, trying to steady her breathing. This was it. Her last chance. Back in Compton, her younger brother Marcus was lying in a hospital bed. Stage 3 lymphoma. The bills were piling up on her kitchen table like a tower she couldn't stop from growing. 4 months behind. That's what the last letter said. If she didn't pay, they'd stop his chemotherapy. Transfer him to county. The kind of place where people became numbers instead of names. Where hope went to die. Serena couldn't let that happen. Marcus was only 19. He'd been accepted to UCLA before the diagnosis. Full scholarship. Their mother used to say he was the one who'd break the cycle. The one who'd make it out. But their mother was gone now. Breast cancer, 3 years ago. Serena watched her fade because they couldn't afford the treatments in time. She'd promised herself at that funeral. Never again. She'd never watch someone she loved die because of money. So she took this job. Maid at a mansion in the hills. The agency said the family was wealthy. Private. Demanding. They didn't say anything else. Serena didn't ask. She just needed the paycheck. The gates buzzed open. She walked up the long driveway, past the expensive cars, past the sculpted hedges, past the men in black suits who watched her with cold eyes and said nothing. Her heart pounded. Something about this place felt different. Dangerous. Like walking into a room where everyone knew a secret except her. The front door opened before she could knock. A woman stood there. Korean, mid-50s, silver hair pulled back so tight it stretched her face. Her eyes moved over Serena like she was inspecting merchandise. Finding flaws. "You're the new girl." Not a question. "Yes, ma'am. Serena Johnson. I'm Mrs. Kwan. Head housekeeper." She stepped aside just enough to let Serena through. "I'll only say this once, so listen carefully." Serena nodded, clutching her bag tighter. "You clean. You stay silent. You stay invisible. Mr. Park doesn't like disruptions." Mrs. Kwan's voice was sharp as glass. "You don't speak to him unless spoken to. You don't look him in the eye. And you do not, under any circumstances, interact with the girl." Serena's brow furrowed. The girl? His daughter. Mrs. Kwan's eyes went hard. "She's not your concern. Not your project. Not your problem. The last maid who thought she could help was removed. The word hung in the air. Removed. Not fired. Removed. Serena swallowed. I understand. Do you? Mrs. Kwan studied her for a long moment. We'll see. She turned and walked into the mansion. Serena followed, heart still pounding. She understood one thing clearly. Whatever this place was, it wasn't just a mansion. It was a cage. Days passed. Serena cleaned floors, wiped windows, folded linens. She kept her head down like Mrs. Kwan told her. Stayed silent. Stayed invisible. But she couldn't stop watching the girl. COA was 7 years old. Small for her age. Delicate, like something that might break if you held it wrong. She had her father's dark eyes, but where his were hard and guarded, hers were soft. Searching. Like she was always looking for something she couldn't find. Every morning, same routine. The girl would sit alone in the sunroom, surrounded by dolls and picture books. Her world was small, contained, safe. No one bothered her there. The other servants avoided her, not out of cruelty, out of fear. Like her silence was something they might catch. Some whispered that she was cursed. That losing her mother at birth had taken her hearing with her. Superstition. That's what it was. But Serena saw something different. She saw a child who was desperately lonely. A girl who sat by windows and pressed her small hand against the glass, watching the world move without her. She saw the way COA would look at her father sometimes, when Junsuk walked past without stopping, and how her little shoulders would sink just a bit lower. She saw the hope flicker and die in those dark eyes, over and over, every single day. The girl arranged her dolls in perfect lines. Straight. Precise. Never a hair out of place. It was the only thing in her world she could control. Everything else happened around her, to her, without her. People spoke and she couldn't hear. Music played and she couldn't feel it. Life moved forward and she was stuck behind glass, watching, always watching, never part of it. Serena's chest ached every time she saw her. But something else caught her attention. Something that made her stop mopping one afternoon and stare. COA kept touching her right ear. Not casually. Not like a child playing with her hair. She touched it carefully, almost unconsciously, the way you touch something that hurts. And every time she did, a tiny wince crossed her face. Brief. Barely there. But real. Serena's blood went cold. She'd seen that look before. That exact look. On her cousin Darnell, years ago. He'd been deaf since birth too. Doctors said the same thing. Congenital. Irreversible. Nothing to be done. But Darnell used to touch his ear just like that. Used to wince just like that. Everyone ignored it because the specialists said there was no pain with nerve damage. No discomfort. Just silence. But there was pain. Serena saw it. Her grandmother saw it too. Turned out Darnell had a blockage. Something lodged deep in his ear canal that every specialist had missed. A simple procedure, 15 minutes, and suddenly he could hear. He was 11 years old when he heard his mother's voice for the first time. Serena stood frozen in the hallway, mop dripping onto the marble floor. COA touched her ear again. Winced again. That's not nerve damage, Serena thought. That's pain. Physical pain. Something is wrong. Something they're not seeing. Her heart whispered something she couldn't ignore. Pay attention. Mrs. Kwan's warning echoed in her mind. Don't interact with the girl. The last maid was removed. Serena looked away. Went back to mopping. But her hands were shaking. And she couldn't stop thinking about that wince. Serena told herself to stay away. Every morning, she repeated Mrs. Kwan's warning like a prayer. Don't interact with the girl. Keep your head down. Stay invisible. You need this job. Marcus needs this job. But every afternoon, she found herself cleaning near the sunroom. Dusting shelves that didn't need dusting. Mopping floors that were already spotless. Just to catch a glimpse of COA through the glass doors. The girl was always alone. Always arranging her dolls in perfect lines. Always touching her ear with that tiny wince that no one else seemed to notice. One day, Serena couldn't take it anymore. She folded a paper crane from a scrap she'd found in the kitchen. Simple. Nothing fancy. She'd learned it from her grandmother years ago, back when life was simpler and hope didn't cost money. She left it on the windowsill outside the sunroom. Didn't wait to see if COA would find it. Just walked away, heart pounding. The next morning, the crane was gone. In its place, a drawing. Crayon on white paper. A bird with blue wings, flying toward a yellow sun. At the bottom, in shaky handwriting, 2 words, "Thank you." Serena pressed that drawing to her chest and closed her eyes. Something cracked open inside her. Something she'd been keeping locked away. After that, it became their secret. Serena would leave small things. A piece of candy wrapped in gold foil. A flower picked from the garden. Another paper crane, then another. COA would leave drawings in return. Butterflies. Stars. A woman with brown skin and curly hair, smiling. Serena had to look away when she saw that one. Her eyes burned. They developed their own language. Not the formal signs COAS tutors had taught her, but something simpler. Personal. Serena would wave from the hallway, and COA would wave back. Serena would touch her heart twice, and COA learned it meant, "I see you." The girl started doing it back. "I see you." Such a small thing. But for a child who'd spent her whole life invisible, it meant everything. One afternoon, Serena was cleaning near the sunroom when COA appeared in the doorway. She stood there, watching, her small hands fidgeting with the hem of her dress. Then she walked over, slow, careful, and took Serena's hand. She led her to the window seat. Sat down. Pointed to her right ear. Serena's breath caught. COA tilted her head, exposing her ear to the light. Her eyes were wide, trusting. She was asking for help. Asking in the only way she knew how. Serena's hands trembled as she leaned closer. She tilted COA's head gently toward the afternoon sun streaming through the window. And she saw it. Deep inside the ear canal. Something dark. Dense. Glistening like wet stone. It wasn't small. It was lodged deep, pressing against everything around it. Serena's stomach dropped. How did every specialist miss this? How did every scan, every test, every procedure overlook something so obvious? She pulled back slowly, keeping her face calm so she wouldn't scare the girl. But her mind was screaming. That's not nerve damage. That's a blockage. A physical blockage. It's been there the whole time. COA looked up at her, those dark eyes full of hope. Serena's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She knew what she'd seen. She knew what it meant. The question was, what was she going to do about it? Serena was walking past COA's bedroom when a hand grabbed her arm. She spun around. Mrs. Kwan stood there, face tight, eyes burning with cold fury. The older woman's grip was stronger than Serena expected. Strong enough to bruise. Come with me. Not a request. Mrs. Kwan pulled her down the hallway, through a service door, into a narrow corridor the family never used. She shoved Serena against the wall and stepped close. Too close. I've been watching you. Serena's heart hammered. Ma'am, I don't know what you... Don't. Mrs. Kwan's voice was ice. I see everything in this house. The paper cranes. The candy. The drawings. You think I'm blind? Serena said nothing. Her mouth went dry. I warned you. Mrs. Kwan's eyes were hard as stone. I told you on your first day. Do not interact with the girl. Do you remember what I said about the last maid who tried to help? Serena swallowed. She was removed. Removed. Mrs. Kwan let the word hang in the air. Do you understand what that means? This isn't a normal household, girl. This isn't some rich family who fires you and sends you home. Mr. Park is not a normal man. The people who cross him don't get second chances. They don't get warnings. They disappear. Serena's blood turned to ice. You have one chance. Mrs. Kwan released her arm. Stop now. Stay away from the girl. Do your job. Collect your paycheck. Go home to whatever life you have outside these walls. She stepped back, smoothing her jacket. Or don't. And find out what happens to people who don't listen. She turned and walked away. Her heels clicked against the floor like a countdown. Serena stood frozen, heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay in her small room in the servants' quarters, staring at the ceiling. The moonlight crept through the window, casting shadows that looked like prison bars. She thought about Marcus. His face, thin and pale in that hospital bed. The way he'd smiled at her last visit even though she could see the fear in his eyes. The bills stacked on her kitchen table. The chemotherapy he needed. The money she didn't have. If she lost this job, he'd die. It was that simple. But then she thought about COA. That dark mass lodged in her ear. The wince on her face every time she touched it. The pain that no one saw, no one believed, no one cared about. 7 years. 7 years that little girl had been suffering in silence. And everyone just accepted it. Serena closed her eyes. Tears slid down her temples into her hair. She thought about her mother. Lying in that county hospital bed, getting weaker every day. The treatments they couldn't afford. The help that never came. She remembered holding her mother's hand at the end, feeling it go cold, promising herself through sobs that she would never, ever let this happen again. Never again watch someone die because she was too scared to act. Never again let money decide who deserved to live. Serena opened her eyes. The moonlight had shifted. The shadows on the ceiling looked different now. She didn't know what she was going to do. But she knew one thing. She couldn't walk away. 3 days passed. Serena couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Could barely think. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it. That dark mass lodged deep in COA's ear. Dense. Glistening. Years of buildup that had stolen a little girl's hearing while doctors shrugged and collected checks. And every time she opened her eyes, she saw Mrs. Kwan's face. Heard her words. People who cross him disappear. Serena moved through the mansion like a ghost. Cleaning floors she didn't see. Folding linens she couldn't feel. Her hands did the work while her mind tore itself apart. On the first night, she paced her room until her legs ached. What if she was wrong? What if it wasn't a blockage at all? She wasn't a doctor. She had no degree, no training, no right to touch that child. If she tried something and hurt COA, she'd go to prison. Or worse. This was a mafia household. The rules were different here. The consequences were final. On the second night, she sat on the edge of her bed with her Bible open in her lap. The words blurred. She tried to pray, but the fear was too loud. All she could think about was Marcus. The treatments he needed. The bills she couldn't pay. If she lost this job, her brother would die. It was that simple. But if she did nothing, COA would suffer forever. A little girl, trapped in silence, while the answer sat right there waiting for someone brave enough to see it. On the third night, Serena broke. She fell to her knees beside her bed, tears streaming down her face. "Lord," she whispered, voice cracking. "I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I'm so scared. I can't lose this job. But I can't ignore what I saw. I can't pretend I don't know." The room was silent. No answer came. Just the ticking of the clock on the wall. Serena pressed her forehead to the mattress and wept. And then, like a whisper from somewhere deep inside, she heard her grandmother's voice. Clear as the day she'd said it, 15 years ago, when Serena was just a girl afraid of everything. God doesn't call the equipped, child. He equips the called. Serena lifted her head. Her tears kept falling, but something shifted in her chest. She thought about her cousin Darnell. Deaf for 11 years. Written off by every doctor. Until someone finally looked. Really looked. 15 minutes. One simple procedure. And his whole world exploded into sound. She thought about her mother. Dying slow because help cost too much and fear kept everyone frozen. She thought about COA, 7 years old. Alone. In pain. Waiting for someone to see her. Serena wiped her eyes. Stood up. Walked to the window. The moon hung heavy outside, spilling silver light across the gardens. Somewhere in this mansion, a little girl was sleeping with pain in her ear and silence in her world. And Serena was the only one who'd noticed. The only one who'd seen. She made a decision. If COA showed pain again, she would act. She would trust what God had shown her. She would use her hands, even if they trembled. Even if it cost her everything. "Okay, Lord," she breathed into the darkness. "I'm scared. But I'm willing." Sometimes, that's all faith requires. The next evening came too quickly. Jun-suk was away on business. The mansion was quieter than usual, the servants moving like shadows through empty halls. Serena was in the linen closet, folding towels, trying to keep her hands busy and her mind still. Then she heard it. A thud. Soft but distinct. Then nothing. Her heart stopped. She dropped the towel and moved toward the sound, walking at first, then faster. Through the service hallway. Past the kitchen. Around the corner toward the east wing. And there was COA. The girl lay on the marble floor, curled into a ball, both hands pressed tight against her right ear. Her face was twisted, contorted in agony. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but no sound came from her mouth. She was crying in complete silence. Suffering in complete silence. Just like she'd done her whole life. Serena's chest shattered. She ran to her, dropped to her knees beside the small trembling body. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." She knew COA couldn't hear her, but she said it anyway. Said it for herself. Said it because she needed to believe it was true. She cradled the girl's head gently, tilting it toward the lamplight from the hall. The dark mass was clearly visible now. Swollen. Pressing against the ear canal. Angry and dense and wrong. Serena's hands trembled. This was it. The moment. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the tweezers she'd taken from the first aid kit 2 days ago. Sterilized. Waiting. Just in case. Her breath came in short bursts. "Lord," she whispered in her mind. "Guide my hands. Please." COA looked up at her, eyes wide, scared, but trusting. That same trust she'd shown when she let Serena look in her ear the first time. That same hope she'd carried in her small body for 7 silent years. "I won't hurt you," Serena signed with one hand, the simple gesture they'd developed together. "I promise." COA nodded slowly. Serena steadied herself. Took a breath. and gently, carefully, moved the tweezers into the ear canal. Her hand shook. She could feel it. The dark mass. Dense and sticky. She hooked it gently. Pulled. Resistance. Her heart hammered. She pulled again. Slow. Careful. Steady. And then, release. Something slid free. It landed in her palm. Dark. Wet. Biological. Years of buildup that had stolen this child's hearing. Serena stared at it. Her stomach turned. But before she could react, COA gasped. A real gasp. Audible. Loud. The girl's hand flew to her ear. Her eyes went wide, wider than Serena had ever seen them. She sat up suddenly, looking around the hallway like she'd never seen it before. Then she pointed at the grandfather clock on the wall. The one that had been ticking her whole life. The one she'd never heard. Her mouth opened. A sound came out. Rough. Broken. Unpracticed. But real. Tick, she whispered. Serena's tears fell. Yes, baby. That's the clock. You can hear it. COA's whole body trembled. She touched her throat, felt the vibration of her own voice. Wonder and fear and something else filled her eyes. Hope. Her mouth opened again. One word. The first real word she'd ever spoken. Appa. Serena pulled her close and held her tight, tears streaming down both their faces. You can hear, baby. Thank you, Jesus. You can hear. Footsteps. Heavy. Fast. Coming down the hallway like thunder. Serena looked up, still holding COA, still crying, still trembling with the miracle that had just happened in her hands. Park Jun-suk stood in the doorway. His face was white as death. His eyes locked on his daughter on the floor. Then they moved to Serena. To the tweezers in her hand. To the blood on her fingers. For one heartbeat, the world stopped. Then his face changed. White turned to red. Shock turned to rage. Pure, volcanic, terrifying rage. What have you done? His voice shook the walls. It was the voice of a man who had killed before. A man who would kill again. Serena opened her mouth. Sir, please, I can explain. He didn't wait for an answer. Jun-suk crossed the hallway in 3 strides and grabbed Serena by the collar. He ripped her away from COA and slammed her against the wall. Her head cracked against the marble. Stars exploded behind her eyes. What did you do to my daughter? His face was inches from hers. His breath was hot, his grip crushing. She could see the tattoos crawling up his neck, the veins pulsing in his temples, the murder in his eyes. I didn't hurt her, Serena gasped. I helped her. Please, look. She tried to show him her palm. The blockage. The dark mass that had stolen his daughter's hearing for 7 years. But his men were already there. 2 of them, appearing from nowhere, grabbing her arms, pulling her away from the wall. Take her, Jun-suk growled. Now. Sir, please listen to me. Serena's voice cracked. This was inside her ear. This is why she couldn't hear. I removed it, she can hear now, please. But he wasn't listening. The fear was too strong. The rage was too hot. All he saw was his daughter on the floor and a stranger with blood on her hands. The guards dragged Serena toward the service corridor. Her feet scrambled against the marble, finding no grip. Tears streamed down her face. And then, a sound that stopped everyone cold. COA screamed. Not a silent cry. Not the muffled whimper of a deaf child. A real scream. Loud. Piercing. Alive. Appa, no. Jun-suk froze. His whole body went rigid. COA scrambled to her feet and ran to him, grabbing his hand, pulling at his arm. Her voice was rough, unpracticed, broken, but real. So real. She helped me, Appa. Don't hurt her. I can hear you. I can hear your voice. Jun-suk stared at his daughter. His face crumbled. Confusion. Disbelief. Something that looked almost like hope cracking through the rage. But the fear was too deep. The instinct too strong. He looked at Serena, then back at COA. His jaw tightened. Take the girl to her room, he ordered one of the guards. And take this woman to the security office. Call the hospital. Call the police. No one leaves until I understand what happened. COA sobbed. Appa, please. But they were already pulling her away. And Serena was already being dragged down the corridor, her heart shattering with every step. She looked back one last time. It's okay, she mouthed to COA through her tears. You're going to be okay. She prayed she wasn't lying. At the hospital, doctors swarmed around COA, tests. Scans. Examinations. They moved with urgency, speaking in hushed voices, glancing at each other with expressions Jun-suk couldn't read. He paced the hallway outside her room, his mind spinning. His daughter was speaking. Hearing. Responding to sounds. Every time a nurse called her name, she turned. Every time a machine beeped, she flinched. It was impossible. It was real. A doctor approached him. Young. Korean. Nervous. Mr. Park, I need to speak with you. Privately. Jun-suk followed him into a small office. The doctor closed the door, his hands trembling slightly. He slid a folder across the desk. This is your daughter's file from 3 years ago. From the clinic in Seoul. Jun-suk opened it. Medical records. Scan images. Notes in Korean he could barely focus on. But one thing was circled in red. A notation at the bottom of a page. Dense obstruction noted in right ear canal. Recommend immediate removal. Follow-up scheduled. His blood turned to ice. Someone saw this. His voice was barely a whisper. The doctor nodded slowly. It appears so. But there's no record of the follow-up ever happening. No procedure was scheduled. Your account was flagged for. He hesitated. For what? The doctor swallowed. Ongoing treatment protocol. High-value client management. The words hit Jun-suk like bullets. One after another. High-value client. Ongoing treatment. His desperation was profitable. His daughter's suffering was their revenue stream. They'd known. They'd seen the blockage. And they'd left it there because his money was too good. Because a cured patient stops paying. They kept my daughter deaf, Jun-suk whispered. On purpose. The doctor said nothing. But his silence said everything. Jun-suk's hands trembled. All those years. All those millions. All those specialists shaking their heads, telling him to accept the impossible. They'd lied. Every single one of them. And the one person who'd told the truth, the one person who'd actually helped, was sitting in his security office, waiting to be arrested. Because of him. He stood without a word and walked out. Serena sat alone in the security office, hands folded in her lap, head bowed. She wasn't praying for herself. She was praying for COA. For Marcus. For everyone she'd ever loved and failed to save. The door opened. She looked up. Jun-suk stood there. But he wasn't the same man who'd slammed her against the wall an hour ago. His eyes were red. His face was broken. He looked like a man who'd just watched his whole world crumble and rebuild in the same breath. He walked toward her slowly. Stopped. And this man, this king of the underworld, this name that made powerful men tremble, fell to his knees. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Serena's breath caught. "I spent millions trying to buy a miracle." His voice cracked. "And God sent one through the woman I hired to clean my floors." Tears streamed down his face. Serena's fell too. Later that night, in COA's hospital room, Jun-suk held his daughter for the first time since she was born. She pressed her ear against his chest. "Appa," she whispered. "I can hear your heart." Serena stood quietly beside them, finally letting herself breathe. Sometimes miracles don't come in fancy packages. Sometimes they come through willing hands and a faithful heart. A billionaire's money couldn't save her. A mafia boss's power couldn't heal her. But a maid with nothing but faith and willing hands did what millions of dollars couldn't. If you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or underestimated, remember this story. God sees you. Type "God sees me" in the comments if you needed to hear that today. Please subscribe now and hit that notification bell so you never miss another incredible story.